All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to The Thoughtful Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Jen Amos. And today I have with me the host of Impact Podcast, Bob DePasquale. His website is bobdpasquale.com. Bob, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jen. Excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. I just thought I'd start because it's a new year. How's it been going for you so far?
Good, good. It's been going pretty well. I live in South Florida. So honestly, today it's like 55 degrees, which for me is a little
Oh,
cold. But
yeah.
I'm inside and warm, so I'm good.
I love that. I'm formerly from California, and they always say the weather's perfect there, at least in SoCal. And I think it's a lot like Florida weather, except we don't have the same humidity, that you have. But
Yeah.
today I'm over here in Virginia, and yesterday it was like 30 degrees.
Oh boy.
So I envy you, but I don't hate you for that. So,
Cool.
well, Bob, for people that are getting to know you for the first time, I know that we mentioned here that you are the host of the Impact Podcast. Tell us a little
Mhm.
bit about your podcast and, what do you love doing? What do you love talking about on your show?
Sure, sure. So the podcast, speaking of impact, is all about talking with really, really interesting people who want to make a positive difference in the world. And we've spoken with people from all different walks of life, business people, athletes, professionals, young people. And the key is that there's something more than just the bottom line or what they do every day. It's
Mhm.
about using their gifts and talents to make a positive impact.
Yeah, I really like that. And let me say that again. Speaking of Impact Podcast, is that correct?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
got it.
But yes,
Okay.
you are the host of the Speaking of Impact podcast. And so very cool. Tell me, Bob, what compelled you to start your podcast?
I was just excited to get that message out there. I learned a lot of things in the world in the past year or so have been controversial, and I wanted to bring people together as much as I could.
Mhm.
I know I'm only one person, but I've heard it said before that you may not be able to change the world, but you might be able to change the world for one. And
Mm.
so my thought was, I want to take these positive vibes and stories from people that I know and people that I just met and share them so that people are more encouraged to listen to each other and do good things with what they've been blessed with.
Yeah, I really like that. It reminds me of why I love podcasting. My primary goal is to always find common ground with people that I speak with through conversation and storytelling to foster community and collaborative opportunities. Because why not? Like, why not? Like, why not be able to find community and bring people together in a time that can feel so divided and polarizing and devastating? So, for you to be sort of that beacon of light right now for a lot of people. I just want to applaud you for that. And just like what you said, it's not necessarily about changing the world, but maybe changing one person's world. And I think to me, it's all about the quality of people that you impact and influence, not necessarily the quantity. That's not always the case. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Quality over quantity, because there are, what is there, 8 billion people in the world? We,
Yeah.
we don't all need to be standing on a stage every day, right? But we can do the
Right.
little things that are incremental that will make our world a better place. And I truly believe that. And I found just in the past 6 months or so that there really have been some great strides, at least
Yeah.
in my area, in the circles that I run in. So I yes, absolutely believe you with that.
Yeah. So speaking of impact, tell
Got
me,
it.
Bob, what have you noticed has been the impact of your show so far? Like, what have you seen kind of manifest from starting your show and talking to all of these incredible people?
I've seen people be more willing to be open and
Mm,
listen to others because I think they realize that we all have something positive to offer.
hmm.
And when you understand that and you look at the person across from you, you may not look the same, you may not feel the same, you may come from different walks of life, but because of communication these days and technology, I mean, you're in Virginia, I'm in Fort Lauderdale, I feel like you're right next to me. And so I can connect with people that I'm otherwise dissimilar with. But
Yeah.
if I can believe that they have something positive to offer to the world and to myself, then we'll just be a better place. So I've noticed people being willing to not even accept that and beyond that, they actually seek it out. They actually say, you know what, I want to talk to someone who I wouldn't have wanted to talk to otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel the same way. I like to just jump on interviews such as this and try to figure out what's amazing about this person or what's unique about this person or what I may have in common with this person. And so I think just kind of your willingness to bring that out in people is something that I really appreciate.
Yep. Thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, I just, like you said, having conversations like this are awesome. I can tell already that you love to learn and ask people questions. It's great.
I do, Bob. So speaking of which, I do have another question for you.
Yeah.
So in your bio, you mentioned that you're an advocate. Let me say it again. In your bio, you did mention that you are an advocate of stewardship. What does stewardship mean to you, and how do you practice that in your advocacy?
Great. I think stewardship is really about taking ownership of what you have. And
Mm,
that could be financial, it could be your gifts, it could be your talents, it could be physical things, it could be intellectual capacity. But being
mhm,
a good steward is using those in the right way, using them for good, using them to help other people to benefit the world that we live in, as I mentioned. So stewardship is taking care of the resources that you've been blessed with. And the way I do it, and believe me, I don't think you can ever be an expert in stewardship. The way I
mhm,
try to do it though, is I was having a conversation about this the other day. Every morning when I wake up, as much as I can, sometimes it's in 5 seconds, sometimes it's maybe 5 minutes, but I try to count the things, the blessings that I've been given, the skills that I have, and I ask myself, okay, what am I going to do with these things today that are going to
mm,
be for the common good?
mhm. I really like that. So, since you mentioned that you count your blessings every day, care to share what you counted this morning?
Yeah, absolutely. Number one, my wife. Uh,
Oh,
and I mean, that's a little sappy, but it's true. I've been going through some digestive issues and some things recently, and honestly, without her kind of taking care of me, just the two of us, without her taking care of me, that'd be tough. I'd also
yeah,
say the fact that I have a home to live in.
yeah.
I've had a fortunate opportunity to do some work overseas from people who don't have a dwelling, and so that's number two. And then number three, I was writing about this actually this week about the
Mhm.
resources, relationships, and routines that I have. And I thought, there are some really awesome people that I've met over the past 6 months. And so my commitment to myself this morning was, okay, how am I going to speak with those people and the connections that they have? And once again, use them for positive impact.
Mhm. I like that you mentioned that. I was just reflecting the other day on how I think in the less than 2 years, I've probably spoken to 300 people via podcasting. And
Wow.
I kind of came to this place where I was like, oh man, like I need to add them on LinkedIn. Like I need to connect them. I can't just interview them and then move on with my life. Hence why I connected with you. Because I was like, I'm gonna
There you
start
go.
today. Like I could backtrack or I could start today. And so that's partially why I wanted to reach out to you before we get started. But I really like that, you think about these people that you've crossed paths with and you think about, okay, what else can I do with them? What else can I bring out of them or what have you? And, I think as a time right now where so we are all essentially isolated or, at home, it does take someone such as yourself to, I think, really be proactive and show people that they're not alone and bring out the best in them. And so I just feel like that is extremely important today, like is really taking that initiative to, like we said, connect with people and bring out the best in them and, hopefully find some collaborative opportunities.
No doubt. Right with you for sure.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. Just kind of talking about your morning blessings. I definitely think the same thing. I just had a bad situation to me happen. I mean, it wasn't a bad situation, but it was more like, oh man, like I wish I was on that project longer and I'm no longer a part of it. But I thought to myself, I counted my blessings anyway. I thought, well, it's not like that was paying my bills anyway. It's not like I started thinking like, oh, well, I still have my work. I still have a roof over my head and I was
Mhm.
able to move on from that. And so I think that, really counting your blessings is extremely important. I heard a meme in 2020 that said something like, I thought 2020 was the year that I was going to attain new things and get new opportunities, but it turned out to be the year where I actually appreciated what I already had. I'm totally butchering the meme, but I think it pretty much. I hopefully you got the message that
Yeah.
counting your blessings, right?
I got the concept, and sometimes you got to take a step back. I tell
Mm-hmm.
people, I tell some of the young people that my wife and I mentor, and I tell them sometimes because with technology information, they're so intelligent these days. Not not that we're not, but I tell them slow down. Sometimes you got to look. Sometimes you do need to look backwards and see what you have, and because some of those journeys and something you mentioned, the tough time, something that was bugging you recently. What a learning experience, probably.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, for sure. I've already moved on from it. I was like, you know what? That was a great experience. So Bob, you hinted two things at me that I feel like I need to pry into. So the first thing is you mentioned that you help build homes, or you're helping something overseas to help people have a home, and
Yep.
you mentor youth. Can you tell me about that? Like, I know it's not necessarily about the podcast per se, but I am curious to know. It sounds like you like to do a lot of philanthropic work.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, it's not directly about the podcast, but it's all
Mm-hmm.
it's all in the lifestyle. It's all in the desire to be of assistance. And so I have
Mm-hmm.
no construction skills. I mean, I can barely use a screwdriver, right? I mean, don't ask me to fix anything. My wife had me put a new light bulb in the other night. I almost messed that up. So, but nonetheless, I do know there are people out there who are in need. And so, yes, I had the opportunity to travel overseas a couple times and do work with an organization called Habitat for Humanity and
Mm-hmm.
build homes for people who don't have homes. And it's not necessarily, like I said, about your construction skills. It's about the desire and the effort. And you
Mm-hmm.
go in there, and I'm basically the human cement mixer because they won't trust me with a brick or a hammer or anything. But I'm there to help. And you develop relationships with the people, and you learn it's more than just the construction aspect of it. And so I've also had the chance to go back to some of the villages that I've worked in, and it's really an amazing experience. You get out so much more than you put in. And so
Yeah.
that's the construction portion of it. And you mentioned about with the young people, and I've known my life. You mentioned being a middle child, and I mentioned you see in my bio there that I'm an only child, and so I
Mm-hmm.
grew up in a very, very loving home, but I did not have influences and people of my age often.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've certainly found that young people are very, very impressionable because I was at that age as well. And you might call me a bit of an old soul because I didn't have anyone in my generation growing up. And so my wife and I have taken on it's fun, the desire to help people, young people, just open their minds up. I mean, we're not teaching them anything more than their professors and teachers and people that they work with or the parents can teach them. We're just
Mm-hmm.
we're just giving them a shoulder to lean on, right? And someone to
Yeah.
talk to, and someone even to talk about the hard things, right? And just encourage them. So we love that work too. And if I would have had someone like that when I was younger, I'm not saying I'd be a better person, but I would have had a different experience for sure.
Yeah, definitely. That's, having, as I mentioned, as you pointed out for me, like I'm a middle child, and I have this very big sister mentality. Like I'm very protective of my sister, but I don't coddle her. I don't protect her from the world. I let her kind of learn her lessons and come to me if she needs help. And I feel like that's sort of manifested in my adult life. Like I tend to sort of just be this voluntary big sister for my friends who are just like a couple years younger than me. And
Uh-huh.
I think in a way it's like it's my own way of like finding healing and even in myself and kind of being the person that I wish I had. Like I wish I had and I mean I have an older brother, but I kind of wish I had an older sibling that helped me in the way that I helped my sister. And I feel like I'm able to do that, with my friends. So I can imagine, in the work that you're doing with the youth, it's very fulfilling for you and maybe self-healing in a sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It
Mm-hmm.
covers all those bases. Just same thing with with going on the habitat trips. You get out
Mm-hmm.
honestly way more than you put in. And
Yeah.
being fulfilled, I've also found that being fulfilled enables you to really leverage the impact that you will make in the world because you feel better about yourself. You want to be more productive. You're encouraged about waking up in the morning and doing whatever it is that you do. So
Yeah.
it's a win. It's a win all around.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Bob, I want to go ahead and shift gears, but before I do, I just want to make sure I've covered all my bases, at least with a Speaker of Impact podcast
Mhm.
and your website, bobdepasquale.com. Is there anything else you want people to know about your podcast or your website before I shift gears here?
Yeah, just honestly, I write a blog once a week and a newsletter as well. So if you just head over to bobdepasquale.com, you can pick up all that information. And we just want to spread that positive message. So you'll find information there. You'll find some initiatives for impact you can download download those. And just check out the information. And no one's going to take in all the information, but I want to provide as many vehicles as I can, such as this, to spread the message.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing that. And of course, we'll mention your website one more time at the end. So, Bob, you are an advocate of stewardship. You run this podcast show. You do philanthropic work, helping build homes overseas and helping the youth. And I know that this comes from somewhere. And the one thing I haven't brought up yet is you battled with cancer at 18. Can you tell us more about that and how that maybe was the inspiration or the catalyst for you to, be who you are today?
Sure. So yes, I battled cancer when I was 18. So like 3 years ago. No, just kidding.
I was going to say, I was like, wait a minute. I was like, I look younger than you.
So my story is this. I was born in New York, and my parents moved down to Florida when I was just 3 years old in the 80s. And so they were kind of like the black sheep of the family, if you will, not in their personality or anything, just that they wanted to leave and get out of New York when my mom's side and my dad's side were all from up there. And they really were running away from the cold weather. And so it wasn't until I was 18 going to college, I said, you know what, I'm going to go back to New York. And so I did. I went to Hofstra University on Long Island, New York. And when you're 18, you think you're this invisible person, right? You can just jump off a cliff and fly to the next one. Like nothing can take you down, right? So I was an 18-year-old going off to college, actually going to training camp to play football in college. And in about a 3 or 4 day period, one of my trainers had said, you know what, you're not running right. Something's wrong. And I was like, sure, whatever. So I did some treatment. I thought I had an injury. Honestly, I thought I had a pulled muscle. And long story short, I was in there. You're up at 5 a.m. preparing and stretching out and getting warmed up before your practice. And he was like, Bobby, why are you still in here? I mean, you just had a pulled muscle. You should be totally healed by now. I said, Rick, it's still sore. So he said, all right, I'm going to actually send you to the doctor. So he sent me to the doctor, and I had a series of tests, and my parents were coming up to New York for my first college football game, right? Big day for a young person. Now they knew I wasn't going to be playing in the game at that point because I had this injury, whatever it was, but it had progressed and progressed. And the day my parents were coming up to New York for my game, I had an appointment with an oncologist. And my oncologist told me that day that you're an 18-year-old. He sits me down and goes, you have, Mr. DePasquale. And I'm like, Mr. DePasquale, I'm 18. Call me Bobby, please. He's like, you have cancer. And I was like, oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding me. Well, I come out of that appointment by myself. My parents called me. They had just landed and they were on the way to my uncle's house where we're all gonna be staying. And I can only imagine, I didn't even know. I was in shock. And I'm sure my mom and my dad were just devastated. So that was a Thursday. That Saturday, we're at my uncle's house, and my uncle's best friend comes over. And he's like, Bob and Susan, my parents' names, take my car. I can only imagine all the tests that you have to go through. You got to drive all over to all these different doctors with your son, trying to figure out what to do. Is he going to survive? Take my car. You can use it. I don't need it. And they were like, oh my gosh, well, I could. And then they didn't know him because they had moved to Florida. So my uncle's best friend, Tim, did not know him. So that was a Saturday. Now my oncologist had told me, we don't know what's going on yet. Don't drop out of any of your classes. Still go to class. So the following Tuesday, I had come out of my class in the morning and I went to go get something to eat in the cafeteria. Now that's how you know that I'm not 3 years removed from college. The TV was one of those little tube TVs kind of hanging.
Oh man. Yep.
In the cafeteria. And I'm sitting there eating a sandwich, whatever I was eating for breakfast. And a plane hits the Twin Towers. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on? And I'm thinking, all right, whatever, accident, no problem. I get on the phone with my dad, say, hey, I'm heading to my next class. I'm feeling okay. What's up? He goes, you're not heading to your next class. You need to come back to your uncle's house now because another plane just hit the Twin Towers.
Oh my goodness.
I was like, what is going on in my life? I got in the car. It took me 9 hours to make what would normally be a 15-minute drive to my uncle's house with the Twin Towers smoking in the distance. And I have a master's degree in broadcast journalism. So I love talking, I love being on the mic. I will never listen to 9 straight hours of AM radio ever again in my life. So I made it back to my uncle's house, and needless to say, it was just chaos. And we found out that Tim, the gentleman, my uncle's best friend, was in the towers and he
Oh
lost his
my
life.
God. Oh, that's awful. That's so awful.
It was incredibly, incredible, flip turn upside down of my life, to
Yeah.
quote the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And so I, you asked what formed my thoughts and ideas and how I kind of made it to this point. And I'll tell you what, it wasn't all of that right at that moment. It probably took me about 2 years to
Hmm.
really recognize what I went through. Now, my
Yeah.
treatment was about 6 months. Praise the Lord. Thank God I'm okay. My doctor told me you're fine. And I
Mm.
had many tests to go through and check in for over the years, but I knew that I would be fine. I was confident. But it wasn't until 2 years later that I actually slowed down, took a step back and say, man, what did I really go through? And
Hmm.
because I thought when it first happened, I thought Bobby, you beat cancer, you're invincible. I almost credited myself with it again. And it wasn't until a couple of years later that I realized what truly happened. And so
Yeah.
now, I do get up and count my blessings every day. And honestly, I found out that my wife, who was a junior, I didn't know her at the time. I found out a couple years after that, my wife was telling me a story about one of her teachers in high school who told the class, the first day of class, he said, all right, kids, I know this is crazy. You're 16 years old, but we're all going to pray for our future spouses.
Wow.
And she told me this. We did the math right when I was in 2001, when I was going through my treatment and going through the whole situation. It was when she was a junior in high school in the fall semester. And it was just like it was
Wow.
way more than me who just defeated. I didn't just defeat cancer. There was doctors and drugs and people and my wife. And, it was just a lot going on. And I didn't even know her at the time. It was incredible.
Wow. Bob, I was not expecting that story. Thank you. Thank you for sure. I'm so glad I brought that up and, kind of learning about that time in your life. It wasn't just about battling cancer, but, being affected by 9/11. My husband, it was funny. I mean, not funny. Sorry. He mentioned it's so crazy, like how all of us can recall what happened around that time, but, for him, he graduated West Point the year that 9/11 happened, and he thought his class wasn't going to go to war. And after that, they're like, oh my gosh, we're so going to war. So it's so incredible, like how everyone has a different experience of that time. But, to know that you were driving through town, as, these towers were falling is just, it's astounding. And I really appreciate you sharing that, because I know even till this day, it could be difficult for a lot of people to talk about that time. But that's why you host Speaking of Impact, because I think you kind of turn that into, you rechannel that as a way to serve other people. So, Bob, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today on The Thoughtful Entrepreneur, sharing your story, sharing your heart, and sharing the good work that you're doing today. Any more closing thoughts before we go?
Well, first of all, I love how you use the word rechannel. I think that's a
Mhm.
great word and great phrase there, because that's really what it is. We can all rechannel our energy. So,
Yep.
my parting closing thoughts would be when you wake up in the morning and you think about what it is that you have, think about how you can use that for good. And that's what Speaking
Mm.
of Impact is all about. So thank you so much for having me on today.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again, Bob, for joining me. And again, to our listeners, this is Bob DePasquale. His website is bobdepasquale.com, or you could find his podcast show, Speaking of Impact, on your preferred podcasting medium. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll chat with you in the next episode. Tune in next time.